Drink Festival. Welcome along. It's great to have your company this afternoon. We've got Gavin Roberts from the Cornwall Sausage Company, who's going to be making hog's pudding this afternoon, which is going to be brilliant. And Gavin and his company supply the Bedworth Steps Hotel, and he is Darren Milgate from Bedworth Steps Hotel. So we're in for a massive treat this afternoon. If I could start with you, Gavin. Good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
Can you explain a little bit, first of all, about the Cornwall Sausage Company?
Wow.
Where'd you start?
Right, the Cornwall Sausage Company is a family-based business. We started off approximately 5 years ago. We decided that we wanted to share the secrets of our sausage wisdom with the rest of the world. So it all started off with our traditional sausage, which my granny taught me how to make as a nipper, bless her. It was a closely guarded family secret for years and still is. However, we do make them and sell them now so that everybody else can share what we've known for years, that we make a cracking Cornish sausage. What we're going to do today is a little differently. We've done quite a few sausage demonstrations in the past, so we thought we'd kind of vary it up a little and we do something a little different. So we're making hog's puddings today because, of course, as we all know, hog's pudding is the mythical Cornish haggis. Nobody quite knows what goes into one, but they've all got a few strange ideas about what it might be. So we're here to try and put to rest some of those misconceptions. Also to answer a few questions, because a lot of sort of amateur sausage makers always wonder about hog's puddings, would like to be able to have a go at them at home, or more interested to know what's in there. But there is very little guidance out there because we have kept this closely guarded. We've fallen out with Devon over hog's puddings along with pasties and cream teas. Of course they're wrong, we invented them, but that's what we're here to show you today. Darren's kindly come along as well. Darren's going to be cooking up a hog's pudding dish. And he's going to be doing another dish with some bacon that we've recently picked up in the award. We just won our first Great Taste Award. Darren is a man that can really bring the best out of any Cornish produce, and that's what he's here to do.
Brilliant, that's fantastic. Thank you very much. And I'm assured that there'll be lots of samples as well.
There will be samples.
Which will be fantastic. Okay, the best part of it. Okay, can you tell us first of all, what is this?
What we've got for you guys, and it looks rather unattractive, I'll give you that. It is a pork shoulder. Now, pork shoulder is kind of one of the butcher's best buddies without a doubt, because everybody knows how to cook pork loin. Everybody knows how to do a roast leg of pork. We all eat chops. We enjoy our bacon. Pork shoulder, however, it never really gets the credit it deserves. It's a great slow roast joint. Darren, I'm sure you've got some ideas on what you can do.
Many.
As a quick idea, if you were given a shoulder to produce a dish, what would you?
Well, we've recently done a dish where we slow braised it down and did it with a little pearl barley risotto, where using some of your bacon through it as well, and the fat in it, cook it down slowly. It's a fantastic dish, and also we've also taken the breaking it down into individual muscles and using it in other ways like that. And, it's a very versatile piece of meat, which generally just gets used for mince or dice, so it's a bit of a shame, really.
Thanks. I think the other thing as well is, of course, that at the minute everybody's thinking, we're buying with our pockets a little bit now, perhaps as well. Pork shoulder is a great cheap alternative. It's full of flavour. The purpose of today, you're going to be mincing the pork shoulder, obviously. Good sausages and pork shoulder go hand in hand. Pork shoulder typically is a fat to meat ratio on a good quality pig that's lived a decent life and had a good, well balanced diet. It's about an 80-20 sort of split between fat to meat, and that's what we're looking for in our sausages. So what I thought I'd do is just quickly butcher a pork shoulder, because to a lot of people you're probably thinking this is quite a big scary lump of meat in front of you. It really isn't that scary. And when we're talking about making hog's puddings or sausages at home, if you've never done any butchery, it's the perfect time, because it really doesn't matter too much if you get it wrong, because you're going to mince it anyway, so it doesn't really matter. So we thought it'd be quite useful just to quickly take you through butchering a pork shoulder. Now, if you went into your local butcher shop or and asked for a whole forecut or a whole shoulder, this is what they would give you. You could, of course, ask your butcher to butcher it for you. If you're going to roast it, you might want to do that because you might want to impress your friends and you want a nice bit of presentation. But to be honest, what you've got to remember when you're doing stuff like this at home, you are trying to push out dishes, you haven't got a time scale, so you can take the time with it, and it really is quite simple. There actually aren't many bones in it. You've got a neck and a rib cage, which we take out in one. The trick to any butchery is always to have a good, sharp knife, and I can't express the importance on that, because it really does make your life that much easier. So all we're really doing when you're deboning meat is essentially you're running a good sharp knife close to the bone, always paring the meat away, and that is essentially it. Constantly looking to really just find the edge of that bone And you can see I'm putting pressure on that knife and bending the knife towards the bones to keep it nice and clean, because you don't want meat all over your bones. Yes, it might make a great stock, but I'm sure you'd rather eat it than you would just make a stock with it. That's the important thing. I mean, it's good to remember as well. I mean, pigs are famous for being able to be used from sort of head to tail, as my granddad used to put it, tuta to tuta, which means that, you know, everything that you cut off here, we can use one way or another, whether it's in a stock, whether it's in a tureen. You know, there's 101 uses for just about every cut of a pig. So that's a rib cage. Just keeping the knife close to the bone, just following the shape of the bone. You know, there's no rush at home, there's no real time scale, you can take your time with it. And all I'm doing is just, you can see here, there's bloody surface of fat here, we don't want that in our sausages. There's a vein there, I don't know if you guys can see that on the screen, I know, but we don't want that in our sausages either. Little bits of bone chip, with a nice cut into the bone a little bit. You don't want to be biting through your sausage and finding bits of hard stuff, so it all comes out. So all the misconceptions about sausages being made from all the nasties, all the bits and pieces that nobody wants to think about, it's all wrong. I mean, years ago, perhaps your unscrupulous butcher might have used it as a way of improving his profits. Certainly during the war, we're all familiar with the term the British banger. Well, that was actually born during the time of the war because the less than scrupulous butcher would put so much water into his sausages that they would explode when they were cooking, and that's where the term comes from a banger. So obviously a well-made sausage won't be exploding in your pan, which brings us back to the topic of when you're cooking sausages. There's no need to prick a good sausage, because a good sausage, it'll hold its own juice. The fat that's in there, you want to keep it in its flavour. It's helping all your seasoning marinate. There's no need to be pricking them because you're just letting the fat run out and taking away the flavour. They're only going to burst if your oven or your grill or your pan is far too hot, or if your sausages are poor quality. So sorry, where I'm talking here and I'm not really telling you what I'm doing, but essentially, again, just trimming out anything that you don't want to eat. If it doesn't look appealing, cut it out. If you think I wouldn't want to eat that, cut it out. It's as simple as that. You've taken out the rib cage, you've taken out the shoulder blade. There's just 2 bones left in this, that's all. We're just going to cut straight into them because, again, we're not looking for a roasting joint here. What we're looking for is something that we're going to mince. So it doesn't matter if it isn't too pretty, we just want to get the bones out, all the bits and pieces we don't want in our sausages. So again, just making a cut and keeping it close to the bone. Bending the knife with it. I don't know if you guys can see that, but I'm actually bending the knife. There's pressure on the knife, keeping it close to that bone at all times. And just following the shape of the bone.
Would you always use pork shoulder for your sausage?
Predominantly, although we also use, to be honest, sometimes we use, if we've got legs that are being sold and we trim a little off the end, sometimes the pork leg goes in. It's not unheard of for loin to go in, certainly not what we would call the chump end, which is the end that is closest to the leg of the loin, because it doesn't make a very good shaped rasher of bacon. That's quite commonly sausages. And also belly as well, which obviously we all know belly, we make streaky with it. And that's right, we make 3 different varieties of streaky bacon. I mean, that is essentially it. What we've got there is a completely boneless pork shoulder now, and that's it. And then what we're going to do is you would just cut that into mincer sized lumps. So anyone that's got a mincer at home, trick is not to overwork your mincer. You've invested in it. Don't burn it out by trying to feed it big lumps of meat. Cut it down into small manageable pieces. And then you're all wondering as well about the rind, and this has still got rind in it. I'm going to show you a quick tip on that, which is it's kind of quite a simple way of taking the rind off the pork. And I'm hoping the guys aren't going to mind it. This isn't my worktop. But I cut it into strips. And then anybody that's used to taking fish, or skin off a fish, will have seen this kind of technique before. Essentially, you make a cut down to the rind, you grab hold of one end, hold your knife flat, just like when you take the skin off a fish, and give it a wiggle. And what you're left with is a great usable piece of meat for your sausage or your ox pudding. And of course just the rind, which if you would like to, you could sew up and you can make yourself some wicked pork scratchings at home with that. Definitely. So So that's pretty much it. I mean, what we've got left then, of course, is a really good pile of usable lean meat with a good percentage of fat. Now for a hog's pudding, as opposed to a sausage, if we're making sausage, we would pretty much use that as it is. It's about an 80-20 split between fat and lean meat. A hog's pudding, on the other hand, is a slightly fattier beast. He's got a little less meat content, a higher cereal content, and a little more fat as well. And that's what gives hog's pudding its different texture. Now, with hog's pudding, it gets likened a lot to other things, certainly white pudding, things like boudin. It's different. I mean, the Irish have got a white pudding, the Scots have got a white pudding, a far higher cereal content, not unusual to find the use of cream or milk in them as well. With a hog's pudding, it's not like that. It really is more like a fatty cereal sausage. It's actually got a higher meat content. Boudin, of course, uses cream. It's a very fine, very delicate eat. Here in Cornwall, we prefer our hog's pudding somewhat more coarse. You know, we like to know that if we're using quality meat, why should we over-process it? Why should we mix it down so that it's unrecognisable? You've got a piece of quality meat, let's keep it that way. Let's let people know that we've got a quality piece of meat gone into our produce. And then there is the big debate, between Devon and Cornwall over the origins of the hog's pudding. Now, I mean, to be honest, with sausages all around hog's puddings and black puddings and anything, there are always people that lay claim to they were the first to come up with it. The French say the boudin noir, that, you know, that we came up with it first. You know, in the north they'll say the black pudding, no, we invented that first. In truth, with, you know, over centuries and centuries and centuries of trade and merchants travelling around, nobody can really truly trace the origins of anything, of course, apart from pasties, hog's puddings and cream teas, flavour and pudding. But swiftly moving on, what we're going to do is we're going to take it on, and I've actually got some meat here that I've minced already, because we couldn't go bringing our mincer on stage, it was a little too big. We managed the sausage machine. So here we've got some pre-minced meat. If you were doing this at home, if you've got a mincer at home, if you're fortunate enough. Of course, if you haven't, it doesn't stop you from doing it. You don't have to butcher the shoulder. You can go to your butcher and just buy some pork mince. This mince, on the other hand, rather than being 80-20, is probably more like 70-30. By that I mean 70% lean meat, so around about 30% fat, basically. In the days of old, a hog's pudding might have contained beef suet. It might have contained pork liver, quite often pork heart, even lungs, in fact, because it was always designed as a way of making the less desirable cuts that little more desirable. However, the tastes have changed, and the modern hog's pudding is a different beast. So lean pork is the way forward with it. This has been through a mincer. Now this has gone through a mincer on a 5mm plate. If you want your hog's pudding to eat a little finer, you can either change the size of the mincing plate that you've used, or you can put it through again. You can mix it again, which will make it a little bit finer. But for the purposes of today, for ease, and because I like a coarse and hot and peppery one, we're going to stick with this. So the next stage to this essentially is that we're going to add our ingredients to it. With me, we've got water, which we'll explain in a minute. I've got some butcher's rust. Now this is commonly available. Now with hog's pudding, there's no strict way of doing it. If you ask somebody to make a traditional English sausage, you're going to get 1,000 different varieties that come forward. With a hog's pudding, quite often it would contain oats. Quite often it might contain pearl barley. The modern day hog's pudding would contain butcher's rust because it's what we all use. It's readily available. I would recommend you guys to go into your butchers, and they would quite happily part with some of this for pence if you want to try this at home. It's going to probably be a good way to do it. Groats is nice as well. We actually do a bespoke hog's pudding for the guys at the Madrita. We use a groat, which essentially is a small grain oat. It's an actual piece of cereal. What that gives you is it gives you a really nice sort of dimension. It gives you a little bit of different texture. So again, experiment. There is no set method. You know, there is no right or wrong. It's all about personal preference. We tend to favour in Cornwall a hotter hog's pudding. If you travel further out into the West Country, over the border, you'll find that they use pepper less. They tend not to use things like coriander. You might find foreign objects in there like skeet. You would also find maybe the addition of cayenne. They use quite a lot of cayenne pepper instead, so it's got more of a chili heat as opposed to peppery heat. What we're going to do though is we're going to quickly mix them up. We're going to load up our sausage machine, and then I'm going to be looking for a couple of volunteers. And we're going to have a couple of volunteers, and they're going to come up and we're going to fill some hog's puddings. So I don't think there's nothing to be scared of here. It's very easy for me to stand up here and make it look easy, but I think there's a couple of people out there that are going to have more than enough capability to come up here and fill a couple of hog's puddings, I reckon.
And also you get a free mug as well if you do that. The incentive there. So this is 70-30 mix, isn't it? 70 meat, 30 fat.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, with a rough guide to quantity, what I've actually got in here is enough to make 20 pounds of hog's pudding, which is quite a lot of hog's pudding, to be honest with you. That equates to around about 12 pounds of meat, is what I've got here. So we give it, if anyone's taking notes or writing down recipes or anything like that, we can sort that out at the end. Now, in amongst that, we're going to season it. Now, whenever you produce a sausage product, you always over-season. It's quite a vigorous cooking process, so it's not like when you season in a dish, it's going to go straight to mouth. It's going to go through a hard time before it gets to the plate. So that's whether you're cooking it as a sausage or in a hog's pudding. Obviously, we produce it raw. We then simmer it or boil it or steam it if you've got the facility, and then we drop it in some cold water to just blast chill it basically. And then we can either tuck into it straight away, which is a raw, which is, to be honest, is an handsome way of eating stuff. Or, as we're more used to seeing, we buy it, it's already been cooked, and then you just slice it and pan sear it. So it's quite a process it goes through, so we do put quite a lot of seasoning in there, because you're going to lose, as it's cooking, as you've simmered, you're boiling your hog's pudding, it's going to lose a certain amount of that through the water anyway, and then it's going to be probably seared again. So it's quite a vigorous thing. Now with me, I've got few random ingredients, to be honest. These are all things that you could quite possibly find in the hog's pudding. Nutmeg, coriander, pepper, of course. You've also got some cayenne, which I would treat with care, but obviously it does add, if you're the sort of person that likes a little bit of extra spice, why not? Sage, which is more of something that we find prolifically in sausages and pudding-based products in the north. And then we've got, here's one I prepared earlier, and I'm not telling you this one, this one's mine, so I'm not asking that.
Come on, give us a clue then.
I can't.
I'll tell you what,
secret. I can't do that. But essentially, what we're looking at is it's a mix, it's salt and pepper, and a blend of herbs and spices. Some of those that you've seen, many others that you've not. Okay, so we won't go into that too much, but essentially we're looking at, over-seasoning it for the average palate. I mean, you can always taste sausages and hog's puddings and things. When you're at the mixing stage, make up a little pate, fry it off. It will never taste quite the same, but I'd recommend doing it, because if it's miles away from where you think you want it to taste, it will still be miles away when you're cooking. So it's a good chance. Now, obviously with things like salt, treat it with respect. I do say over-season, but don't go mad with it, because they will eat salty otherwise. What I've done is I've basically put all my dry ingredients in there. The next stage is I'm adding water. Now, to my 12 pounds of meat, I'm adding 4 pounds of water. Ideally, you want to use chilled water, because it's going to help with regards to shelf life. It's going to make your hog's pudding last a little longer, and also it's going to make it look better. It sounds daft, I know. If you use cold water when you're producing sausage-based products, they have a far better visual appearance. They're much sort of more appealing to the eye. I'm just going to whip that up because I'm getting around today. Have you got anybody that fancies getting involved at this stage, or is everyone going to hold back? Is that a raised hand?
Yeah, I'll give it a go.
Come on over, bud. Get stuck in.
I don't want to bug because I've got a bug.
It's alright, to be honest with you, I didn't want to get too dirty, so I thought I'll bring you in. Are these fired up? You can just ask you to wash your hands first, whilst I remove my meat.
What's your name, please, sir? Where are you from, Martin?
Redruth.
Okay, Martin from Redruth, well done to you. Can I just ask you, Gavin, presumably, you wouldn't let us know because it's your own Cornwall sausage company secret about the spices, but has it taken you a little while to actually get the right blend, the right sort of flavour for you?
Well, I'll tell you what, we'll glove you up, pal, you'll be alright. Because we're not eating these guys, we're going to use some blue gloves. We've had a mishap with the sink. Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Yeah, no, sorry. Because you obviously can't tell us your particular blend of spices and seasoning in there. Has it taken you a while to actually get it to how you think a hog's pudding should taste?
I've been very fortunate in the fact that I've had a background and upbringing in this side of the industry, so I would say I've had a little head start. But to be honest, the key is experimentation. Essentially, if you're at home, if you're making a £5 batch hog's pudding, you're going to get 5 good puddings out of that. It's going to last you a little while unless you're a real connoisseur of the stuff and you're really getting through it. And essentially it's a case of season taste, always heavy with the salt, always heavy with the pepper. Feel free to throw just about anything in it. If you're going to be traditional, you're looking at flavours like coriander, parsley, perhaps a little bit of caraway, which sounds a bit odd, something that we associate with baking, but it's got a really nice round flavour to it. But just have an experiment. There is no right or wrong, guys. You all right there, chap?
So it's to your own personal
Right,
taste.
we're going to get stuck in. We're looking for a nice, even mix there, my friend. Don't be afraid of it. You're a big fella. It's not going to bite you. What we're actually looking for here, guys, is there's an actual point in the mixing stage where this will start to become a little elastic, and by that I mean the little bits of fat that are there will actually start to draw out and will be a little springy, a little bit elasticy. And that's at the point that we want to start adding our rust, because it's at that point where it's going to accept the rust and it's best going to bind the product together. And the reason for the rust of the cereal in a hog's pudding is it's there for an absorbency factor. It's a bit like a sponge. So when you've cooked your hog's pudding, it's going to soak up all the juice, it's going to trap in all the flavour, and that's what it's there for. Rust gets branded around like a dirty word. It really shouldn't be. It's there for a purpose. In a cheap sausage, you'll find high quantities of rust, low quantities of meat. In a good sausage, a traditional sausage, you will find rust, but it will be in proportion, and that's what we're talking about. That's the important thing. We've actually got about £1.5 of rust there. Again, so it's about £1.5 in a £20 mix. It's not a massive amount of rust, but again, in a hog's pudding, you expect to find it. That's more than you find in the sausage, because it's there to soak up the extra fat. Yeah, a little bit, give it a quick stir if you can, got a bit of speed there.
You said this is quite a coarse mix, is it?
This is quite a coarse mix, because I think a hog's pudding should be quite open textured, in my opinion. It's not for everybody, and again, if you're experimenting at home and you wanted to make your own and you found that was a little coarse for you, put it through a mincer again. It's no problem. You'll get your butchers, put your mince through twice, or for a smaller plate, perhaps for a 3mm plate. You'll start with a finer mince, you'll get a finer eating product. It won't be as coarse textured.
Just while Martin is mixing, are there any questions that anybody would like to ask Gavin at the moment?
I'm looking for an additional volunteer.
Okay, right, come on then. Who would like to volunteer to actually give Martin a hand up here? And don't forget you get a free mug as well. Oh, you will, thank you very much. Sorry, what's your name, please? Sheila. Where are you from, Sheila? Sheila from Probus, well done. Thank you very much. Okay.
Probus, I'm expecting a lot, being a dragon man. You're fighting your own corner. But then I can win either way, folks, because also the folks can now recruit. So I'm going to win either way. If you would like to. I mean, to be honest, what we're producing here today, guys, and just for the record, isn't going to be eaten. We're producing these for fun so that everyone can see exactly how they're produced. Get you up that other end. Right, what we're going to do, we're going to load this in. I think it's only fair now, because now we've got a battle of sexes going on as well. So we've got men versus girls here. Over the Hog's Pudding sort of 2012 Cornwall Food and Drink Challenge. I reckon that'll do, Martin. I reckon we're there. He's a good mix, I'll give you that. I don't know whether the camera can see that or no, but what we've got is a certain element. If you can see these white little bits, guys, there are elements of like a slightly stringy effect, and that means that it's really like a good consistency. It's bound well. I'm just going to pop this in here, and this is where it starts getting a little generation game, I'm afraid. And what I've got here is a piston filler. This is something that you've probably kind of seen lurking out the back of a butcher's shop if ever you've managed to peek over the counter. At home, you can use, there's loads of really good little at-home sausage machines on the market. You haven't got to spend a lot of money. If you like making sausages, it's likely that you're going to be doing it for a long time. You'll be doing it for years to come, because most people kind of, once you start it, they get addicted to it. It's a bit like that. You'll get a good little sausage machine for around about £100. Find them on eBay. We haven't started manufacturing them yet, so you can't buy ours. But it might happen one day, who knows. Right, so with this, I'm going to pop that well out of the way. What we've got here is a machine now with our hog's pudding mix in. What you guys can't quite see is there's a knee-operated lever down here, and as you touch the knee-operated lever, the bottom of the machine, the piston comes up. There's only one way it can go, so anything in the machine is going out. Alright, Ryan? We're going to fill into a natural casing. Now, what that means is that it's a natural gut. With a sausage skin, we'd be using either a pork intestine, if we're using traditional gut. If we're doing the chipolata, it'd be a lamb intestine. With a hog's pudding, it's bigger, so it kind of makes logical sense that actually what we're actually using is a length of cow gut. It's what we would call an ox middle. In Devon they would use an ox runner, which would give you a slightly bigger sort of girth of ox pudding. It's not all about girth, it's about quality. So we use the middle down here. So we're going to dig some of them out. I think if we let Martin have a go first. I'm sorry, what's your name again? Sheila, you can come up next. No. That's all right, no problem.
So Martin, is this the first time you've made sausages? Yeah, the first time. Hopefully not the last. Okay. How about you, Sheila?
Yes, it is the first time. Yes.
Lovely.
Well, we've had a slight technical hiccup here. I've had to send the runner to go fetch the skin. Sorry guys, bear with me. Anyone that knows me well will know that I'm disorganised at best, and I've done well to get this far.
So, it needs to go in the casing, is that right?
It needs to go in the casing. The casing I've somehow managed to leave at the stand. Failing that, we'll be going and asking very nicely over Mr. Roach. Thank you, guys. But no, so, I mean, essentially what we're going to do is we're going to put the length of gut on the spout. We're going to let the first little bit come out so that we get rid of the air, because I think it's only fair on the front row, to be honest. We're going to tie off our casing, and then what we're looking for is a nice steady flow, one continuous flow of a nicely presented, well-rounded hog's pudding. Alright? We'll get there, don't worry. I've got faith. You look like a man who now loves pudding. You're right. All we need is a casing.
Alright, well while we're just waiting for the casing, let's just move on to Darren then. So Darren, can you give us some idea of what you'll be making then, once the hog's pudding over here is finished?
Yeah, well we've started off, I've taken a hog's pudding which hasn't been, that's also with hair and other things. This is one of Gavin's other ones which I cooked this morning, because it's always best cooked and left to set for a while. So I'll take that and fry that off as Gavin said, but I thought, you know, it's always one of those things, sausages and bacon, and it's always seen as a sort of greasy product for fellas like myself and Gavin. But we're going to try and do a salad with it, so using some fresh seasonal nuts. So I've got some cob nuts, which are an old nut which used to be around in abundance years ago, but isn't so much anymore, but it's a good old traditional English nut, so we're using some of that. Some fresh new seasoned walnuts, some Jerusalem artichokes, and some wild mushrooms. We put that together into a salad with a local plant called a gretti, which is a marsh plant, similar in taste to samphire, but try and make a sort of light salad with the pepperiness of the pudding going through it, saltiness of the marsh plant, and yeah.
Sounds really unusual. Is it becoming more popular to eat something traditional like hog's pudding, you know, at a top sort of hotel restaurant now? I mean, with a new slant on it.
Yeah, I mean, where we are at the Bedouin Sets, we've got two different restaurants which operate very differently. On there's the Wild Cafe, where we're all about, you know, things being back to basics and just it's a meal on a plate, and we do a lot with salads and things, but it's all about the ingredients. So people like Gavin, like the local suppliers who produce the vegetables and those for us. You know, we're just using old traditional ingredients, putting them into dishes which are flavoursome and just big and bold. And you know, we've got obviously the Scarlet Hotel, which is next door. So between the two hotels, it's all one company. So we try and have a bit of variety in what we do. We're less about the fine dining element, where the other two kitchens excel, and we're more about just good old-fashioned produce and cooking it well. And
brilliant, really looking forward to seeing that. Now we've got the casing over here, so great stuff.
Thank you, Steve.
This could be very interesting.
So this could be expensive, I think I owe that man a beer or two there somewhere. Right guys, so when you look at this, it looks pretty unattractive at the minute, let's be honest. There's no two ways about it, but it is without a doubt the best tool for the job. If you don't fancy using natural skins, if you are just that little bit squeamish about it, there are some products out there. You can get like a plastic sleeve that will do the same sort of job. It won't do it so well, if I'm honest with you, which is why that we favour a natural casing. it wouldn't. You're quite right. It wouldn't taste quite the same because it doesn't do quite an effective or as effective job. But what I'm going to do here, if you're at home, guys, and you've got your hydraulic filler, trick is always to get. So many people make the mistake. They'll like tie off their first one before they start doing anything. There's air in the machine. You're going to get like a balloon animal effect going on. So we need to get that out first. So just because I quite like the front row, we're going to get rid of that first. So you can see all that air coming out. The machine isn't quite full, obviously, but that would cause one hell of a mess if we didn't get rid of it.
Have you had disasters? You've got to have, you know, had
not for a long time, not since I was a little boy. I haven't been early since I was young, but no, it's always entertaining when people take hold of it for the first time. I think, you know, they're quite sort of they aren't too sure what to expect, and I think it's the anticipation of something coming out the end that probably gets people more than when it actually does. So we've got rid of the air, and now what we're looking for is we're just looking to fill that nicely. So that's a nice ox pudding. He's not overfilled. When we try to tie that, he's not going to split. He's got a good girth. He's not a bad length. And that's all we're looking to do. Nice and even.
You're making it look really easy.
It is.
Yes.
It is easy.
Come on, Martin.
After you chat.
You
So
can do it.
left hand just guiding the ox pudding. Right hand just a little, just almost touching that, not gripping it, but just touching it, just to give it a steady flow. And then with your right knee, lean against that. That's all it.
Oh, well done. That's all right.
Let's give the lady a go a second.
Brilliant. Good luck, Sheila. Well done, Martin. Fantastic.
I told you look like a man who can handle old pudding. He's a red roof man. They handle most things going west. Right, my lovely. We'll go the same again. Right, we've already got the air out of it because we've been filling. All I'm doing here, guys, is there's nothing posh about this knot. Actually, it really is just, you know, the knot you tied as a child. It's just a case of stopping that from running out the end. And it will serve another purpose as well at a later date. We'll talk about that. Right, my lovely, you ready?
You've got the hard part.
All we're looking to do is your left hand just taking the weight of it, and with your right hand just a little touch, just to slow it up a tiny bit. If you grip too hard, all that will happen is you'll split the skin, and it'll be everywhere. We don't want to see that. No pressure or anything. But apart from that, away you go, and it's just a case of leaning your right knee on that plate, and it will start. There we go. We're away.
Well done, Sheila. That's brilliant.
A little less pressure. Is that the end? Oh, we're there. We're all done.
Oh, that's fantastic.
It's alright. It's not about the quantity. It's about the quality, ladies and gentlemen. You guys, you aren't out of the woods yet, so we're going to time off. All right.
Well done. I think you both did pretty good.
So we're nearly done now, guys. You can bear with me. And I know Darren's itching to get cooking. So what we're looking to do, essentially, we've now got what my nephew calls, bless him, a sausage anaconda. And I can understand why you might think. All we're after now is it pretty much looks nearly there, doesn't it? So we're just going to take, you know, what we want as one ox pudding. Now I would say I can near as damn it, because I do this quite a bit. I could take that and weigh that, and it'll be around about a pound in weight. Doesn't really matter, you can have as big as you want. And then all we're going to do is we're going to take our piece of string. There's no fancy knots, but we'll give that one a little twist just to separate it. And then the same thing really. It's just a couple of good old granny knots. And then what we do is every other one we tie a little knot in the end. And the reason for that is because when you guys are at home and you're cooking them, it gives you something to hang it from. Now I say that because if I was going to cook it, what I would do is I'd have a nice deep stock pot, I'd balance something like a wooden spoon across the top, I would suspend it from the string into the water so that it isn't touching the bottom of the pan, and that way you aren't burning one side or the other. It just keeps it in there nice. It's just the way that I like to cook them, it's the way my gran used to cook them, so therefore it's the only way to cook them. But Darren will tell you differently. So it really is just a case of every other one, and then so we've tied a knot on the end of that one. The next one we just tie and we cut, and that is it. And then we're obviously looking for repetition, so it's just again take the first one, see the second one, pinch him, twist him, and same thing. Do you want to have a quick go? Do watch the knife because it's very sharp. That's more than enough length you'll need for that job, what do you think? Just tie him off like a granny knot. So over on himself. Do that one twice. And with that one, you just want to tie a little knot in the end.
Well done, Sheila. So, Gavin, can I ask you again, if you were going to cook one of those, what's the best way of doing it? In water or?
I think for most people, I know the guys at the Scarlet, they use sous vide cooking, so they put them into a thermostatic water bath and off they go. Now most people at home don't have thermostatic water baths. Most people at home might have a big old pot. In which case the trick is you want to get your pot to the point where it wants to boil. We're talking about a simmer. We aren't boiling. We just want to simmer. So at the point where you just start to see light bubbles, you want to try and keep them there. Now, if I was going to do it and just walk away, most people have got a meat thermometer in their kitchen. To be honest, sometimes the best way to go about this is a proper farmer's kind of arrangement where you would string your thermometer into water as well, just to make sure that it stays running. But to be honest, just keeping it at a simmer for around about 40 minutes to an hour. While you've got that in and simmering, take yourself a nice big bowl of hot water, regular water, tap water, pop it into the freezer to get it to the point where it's just about to freeze. If you take your hog's pudding straight out of the hot water, drop it straight into the cold water, it will send it into like a shock. And it will send it, the temperature will start careering down, but what you'll get is you'll get all the lovely juices from around that meat will start to set, exactly that. So that you get a nice set around it. You can then either tuck into it when he's still warm, which I've got to be honest is heavenly in my opinion as a butcher, or you can obviously let it go cold, pop them in the fridge, slice it off and sear it as you would usually expect to do. But I think you're pretty much there. So can we have a round of applause?
Thank you very much, Sheila and Martin. Brilliant.
Sheila and Martin.
And he's going to get the treatment. Thank you very much. That's lovely.
Well done.
Okay.
You're welcome.
There you go, Sheila. Thank you. Thanks
We'll
very much for that.
I
Brilliant.
think if the guys on the pop down to the Cornwall sausage shack at the bottom there, we'll find your pudding take home with you guys, alright? You're welcome.
That's fantastic. Gavin, thank you very much. It all looks amazing. And you made it look really easy, but it's not as easy as it looks, I can tell you.
I'm going to be quieter and
Well
time yours pudding.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much to Gavin Roberts from the Cornwall Sausage Factory. Brilliant.